Please be seated.
Go ahead, Mr. Alder.
Thank you, Judge. Detective Ratzburg, I take it on December 3rd, when you arrived at the scene and began your investigation, you didn't jump to any conclusions about what the cause of death was for Julie Jensen, correct?
Tried not to.
That is, you've been trained that it's important to remain objective in conducting a death investigation, right?
True.
You want to consider all possibilities, correct?
Correct.
You don't want to start with one hypothesis and just pursue that hypothesis, fair to say?
Fair to say.
One problem if you pursue a predetermined hypothesis is that the evidence you see, you may look at from the wrong perspective, right?
Possible.
It's possible that you could have a misleading interpretation of the evidence if you have too much bias in pursuing one hypothesis, right?
True.
So as of the time of Julie Jensen's unexpected death, you were open to considering several hypotheses. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
One possibility you considered was that this might be a homicide, right?
Yes.
You also considered the possibility that this could be some sort of accidental death relating to her medication, right?
Yes.
And you also considered the possibility that this could be a suicide, right?
Yes.
You received some, and as of December 3rd, you had very little information to go on. You're just starting your investigation. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
You had a lot of crime lab tests to do, correct?
We did.
Experts to consult, right?
Yes.
As of December 3rd, you received some information from Mr. Jensen that Julie Jensen had been depressed, correct?
He stated that.
And he told you that she had seen the doctor for depression, right?
He said that she saw the doctor. I'm not sure if it was for the depression or that she was sick.
You understood from December 3rd on that she'd been prescribed Paxil, right?
Yes.
And you knew that Paxil was an antidepressant.
Not till a day or two after. I never heard of Paxil back then. I did look it up, and then a couple days later came to that conclusion. But you're talking about the 3rd, so my answer would be no.
Okay. Within a couple days, certainly, you realized that she had been prescribed antidepressants from her doctor.
Yes.
Mr. Jensen also reported to you on December 3rd or soon thereafter that she had had some mental health counseling in the past, correct?
We're talking about December 3rd again, sir?
I said December 3rd or within a few days thereafter.
In December of '98, I came across that information.
You learned that she had previously had counseling with Paul DeFazio, true?
True.
At the time, on December 3rd, when you were at the house, you asked Mark Jensen for consent to search his home, correct?
Yes.
He did consent, true?
True.
He signed a form allowing you to search the home, correct?
Yes.
And to seize whatever contents you deemed important enough to take, true?
Yes.
He also signed a consent for you on that date at your request to get medical records, true?
True.
He allowed you to get medical records for Julie Jensen, correct?
Yes.
He also signed a consent for his own medical records, is that right?
Yes.
And that was on December 3rd that he signed those consent forms?
Yes.
Did you ever attempt to obtain Mr. DeFazio's records for Julie Jensen's counseling?
Yes.
When did you get those?
There were no records to be had.
You're asserting that Mr. DeFazio did not have any records?
No, I'm stating that I spoke with Mr. DeFazio.
When was that?
I don't recall precisely which day. I didn't write it down.
Can you give me a year?
Well, the way I recall, I contacted Mr. DeFazio, and I recall his office being over by St. Catherine's Hospital off Sheridan Road. And I visited with him, and he stated to me that it was so long ago, he did not have independent memory of Mark or Julie Jensen, and that the records, it was so far old, or it was that old, that he no longer has any records of the Jensens. And he couldn't remember, he basically had no information about the Jensens or anything like that.
Well, you've since seen Mr. DeFazio's records for Julie Jensen, haven't you?
I have not, no.
Did you, is anywhere in this report, is there any indication that you ever spoke with Mr. DeFazio?
No.
Do you have anywhere a report or a note or anything that tells us when you went to see Mr. DeFazio?
I do not.
Can you tell me what year it was that you saw Mr. DeFazio?
I'm not sure of that.
Was it in 98 or 99?
Could have been.
Could it have been after Mr. Jensen was charged in 2002?
I doubt that. I believe it was previous to his charging.
You didn't take any statement from Mr. DeFazio?
I did not.
Is there any kind of log or anything like that that would tell us when you saw Mr. DeFazio and what time?
No.
Hey, that's one reason you write the reports that you indicated, so you'd know when you had contacts with people in the investigation of a particular case, right?
Well, it depends on the information, just like you stated. I mean, you know, we get all kinds of calls at the police department of people that I talk to that just, if I put down everything in my report, people that had no information, my report would be 10 times longer. So unless there's something that they have some pertinent information about, if they have no information, I don't necessarily put it on the report, and it depends on the circumstances.
Well, Mr. DeFazio sounded like he might have some pretty important information, right?
No, he didn't. He did not recall the Jensens. He had no record of them. His records, it was long enough where he purges his records, and so he just didn't know who the Jensens were and did not recall speaking with them. I further considered see if I had the right DeFazio, too. I looked in that area, and that didn't come up with anything either.
Were you here when Dr. Mainland testified?
Yes, I was.
Did you hear her go through Mr. DeFazio's records?
I did not, but
Were you here when Therese DeFazio testified?
yes.
And testified that Julie Jensen told her that she had seen Mr. DeFazio?
Did Mrs. DeFazio say that?
Were you here when she said that? That Mrs. Jensen told her she had seen her brother-in-law, Paul DeFazio, for counseling?
I recall her saying that, but I don't recall her if that was here on the stand or that was somewhere else.
On December 4th, you were conducting investigation in this case, is that right?
Yes.
December 4th, 1998. One thing you did was search Mr. Jensen's home again, right?
Yes.
What time did that occur?
I'm not sure.
Would your report refresh your recollection as to when you searched the home?
I don't think so, no.
You didn't make any note of when you searched the home again?
There's possibly another officer's report that may reflect that, but I don't recall what time I went back to the Jensen home.
How long were you there?
Not very long.
What does that mean?
Again, I'm estimating, but less than an hour.
What did you search for on that day?
Well, I was at the autopsy previously to that, and I spoke with Dr. Chambliss, And I asked Dr. Chambliss, we still have the home, it's still guarded, the home is still secure. Is there anything else that you can think of that we collected? And I went through the list of things that I collected. I consulted with Dr. Chambliss, and he couldn't think of anything, but he asked that I go check the bedroom area to see if there was any type of fluids, body fluids in particular, anywhere in there. And so when I returned to the Jensen home on December 4th, I did look in the bedroom for any type of vomit, blood, any type of fluids. And I also, because I knew I was going to release the home back to Mr. Jensen, I wanted to make sure that the home was secure, the doors were locked, and that nobody entered the home even though the officers were guarding it. So I went through the entire house checking the doors and looking over the scene. And I, at Dr. Chambliss's suggestion, I looked around the bedroom again.
Okay. In that search of the home, you specifically looked at the bedspread and the sheets and things like that, true?
Yes.
That was what Dr. Chambliss had suggested to you, correct?
Yes.
You observed no bodily fluids of any significance, true?
True.
You didn't collect any of the bedspread or sheets or anything like that, right?
Did that? No.
You didn't submit, obviously, then you didn't submit anything for testing, correct?
Correct.
You searched.
Just so we're clear, on December 4th, we're still on?
And you're right, it wasn't a very clear question. In terms of what was on the bed, you submitted none of that for any testing, correct?
I guess where I'm confused is you said I didn't submit anything. The stuff that I recovered without a date. So the stuff that I recovered on December 3rd, which included the bowls, I did send to the crime lab.
Right.
I did not collect the bedding
Right.
on December 4th or ever.
Right, and that's what I'm asking. None of the bedding was tested, correct?
Correct.
No pillows, no blankets, no sheets, no anything?
Nothing,
Right.
sir.
You also checked elsewhere in the room looking for any fluids, correct?
Yes.
Checked the carpet, right?
Yes.
You didn't find anything of any significance anywhere in that bedroom, true? Again, we're talking about your search for fluids, Detective Ratzburg.
Well, I don't know if you mean on December 4th. Where I'm coming for is fluids statement that you made. We did recover the glass.
I understand.
Okay. But on December 4th, no.
At no time did you ever submit any carpeting or anything else for testing, right?
Correct.
And that's because you saw nothing of any consequence in your view on the carpet, right?
Yes.
What time was it on December 4th that, or was it December 4th that the home was released from the police?
I'm not sure.
Was it done on that day or was it done the following day on December 5th?
It's on December 4th.
Is there anything that would tell you what time that took place?
Not that I can think of.
What officers were in the home on December 4th?
Nobody, just myself.
I thought there were some other officers that were trying to keep the home secure.
But they wouldn't have went into the home.
They were just standing outside the home?
Correct.
You were the only one, to your knowledge, that went inside the home on December 4th?
Correct.
Well, tell me about, so you're at the autopsy on December 4th, you searched the home on December 4th. What else did you do on December 4th, Mr. Ratzburg?
I recovered an envelope from Ted Voigt as I was leaving the Jensen home.
And what time would that have been?
I don't recall.
Does your report indicate, you have the entire Pleasant Prairie Police report there, the 32 pages, at least through near the end of 2002, correct?
No.
What else is there?
Well, when you say report, a report contains witness statements, evidence, photos, so forth and so on. You have I guess the proper term would be the narratives.
Right.
Okay. Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Okay. I believe this to be the narrative of this case.
Is there anything in there that would tell you when you were, when you left the home?
I don't believe so.
Now, when you left the home, was Mr. Jensen there?
You say left the home.
December 4th.
Okay. No.
When you left the home, did the other officers leave the home? The outside of the home?
Yes.
So everybody, all Pleasant Prairie Police Department personnel left with you on December 4th. Is that right?
I'm not sure if the officers left with me. I know I made some contact with Mr. Jensen and let him know he could get back into his house, and I just don't recall those times.
Well, is there anything in your report that would tell you what your activities were and when you were doing them on that day?
Pertaining to December 4th,
Yes.
there's some mention of December 4th, in particular, the envelope I recovered from Mr. Voigt.
Can you tell me what time that was at?
Unlikely, no.
I didn't hear your answer, sir.
No,
You said something before, no.
unlikely, I said.
Read back the answer, please.
Answer, there's some mention of December 4th, in particular, the envelope I recovered from Mr. Voigt. Question, can you tell me what time that was? Can you tell me what time was that at? Answer, unlikely, no.
Unlikely.
Is there any other report that would tell you what time you did things that day?
Not that I'm aware of.
How long after leaving the house was it before you had contact with Mr. Jensen on December 4th?
I don't recall.
Was that contact with Mr. Jensen on December 4th in person?
I don't recall.
Is there anything anywhere that would refresh your recollection as to the type of contact you had with Mr. Jensen and when that was on December 4th?
Not that I can think of.
Are you sure that you had contact with him on December 4th as opposed to December 5th?
Yes?
And how is it that you know that?
I'm going through my memory here of something that occurred 9 years ago.
I'm trying to figure out how you know that given that it was 9 years ago, I'm trying to figure out how you know that it was December 4th, since you don't appear to have any memory of whether it was in person, by phone, or anything else.
I recall it being on December 4th, 9 years ago.
And what kind of contact was that? What, can you tell, I mean, if you're sure it was on December 4th, tell me what it is that leads you to that conclusion.
My memory
And what is it you remember?
about contact with Mr. Jensen on December 4th?
Yes.
That I released the house back to him on December 4th.
And how did you do that?
I'm not sure.
Do you know?
I don't remember.
Do you know that you did that as opposed to some other officer?
That could have happened.
You were at the autopsy, true?
True.
Who else was present at that autopsy?
Dr. Chambliss, myself, Roger Johnson. I think that's about it.
How about Chris Hernandez or Barbara Rossman?
Barbara Rossman could have been.
Chris Hernandez?
I don't recall that.
How long did the autopsy take or last?
I don't know.
Is it more than an hour, more than 2 hours, more than 3 hours?
I don't recall.
Can you give me, can you tell me if it was more or less than an hour?
It's probably more, I'd be guessing, and I don't want to do that. I don't know. I'm sure it was more than an hour, though.
And I haven't been in an autopsy. I'm just trying to get some idea of how long this took, Detective Ratzburg.
I'm not sure.
Were you responsible for taking the photographs at the autopsy?
I took photographs at the autopsy.
Were any other photographs taken to your knowledge?
No.
So you were responsible for taking the photographs?
I wouldn't say responsible, no. That's it.
You are the only one taking photographs at that autopsy.
No.
Is somebody else? I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay. We were at the autopsy, and when you're at an autopsy, there's a term that we use. Sometimes you're dirty, sometimes you're clean, meaning that you touch the body. Dr. Chambliss was recording the autopsy with some photographs, and at his direction with his camera, I did take some photographs for him. He took some photographs, and I took some photographs. At that time, he was what we call dirty, or possibly, if I remember, he might have been wanting to point something out. So I operated his camera for him to document things at the autopsy. So the camera was his, he kept the film, I assisted him in taking photographs.
Okay, and the autopsy report S7 says photographs are taken by Sergeant Ratzburg.
Probably, that would be accurate, yes.
And so, did Dr. Chambliss take pictures or not?
He did, yes, I recall him taking photos.
Had you had any training in taking such photos?
I've had photography training, whether it was specific to autopsies, I don't recall right offhand. And I've had some of those cases, and I can't remember if it was before 98 or after, but I've had some training in photography, yes.
Is it you can't remember if your training in photography was after 98 or something specific to autopsies?
I've had training in photography, whether there was specific about autopsies before 98, I don't recall.
And had you had the training before 1998 in taking photographs?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to get some sense, Detective Ratzburg, of your activities on December 4th and when they occurred. And according to Exhibit S7, which has been admitted that the autopsy took place at 2:25 p.m.
Okay, could have.
So,
Did you say
What-
AM, sir?
no, p.m.
Very good.
So what did you do after the autopsy?
I went back to the Jensen home, I recall that.
Was it dark out?
I don't recall.
Do you think the autopsy lasted for more than 2 hours?
I don't recall.
How long a drive would it have been from St. Catherine's Hospital where the autopsy was conducted to the Jensen home?
At the most, again, depending on the weather, half hour.
Then you believe that you searched the Jensen home for an hour or more?
I don't believe it would have been more than an hour to look through the home. I would think an hour or less, possibly. Again, I'm estimating.
What's your best guess?
About an hour or less.
I mean, is about an hour your best guess, Detective?
That would be my best guess.
Then after that, you spoke with the Voights?
Yes.
Did you take a statement from the Voights
When?
on December 4th?
No.
You didn't take a statement from them.
I did not, no.
What was your contact with the Voights on December 4th?
They gave me a letter, and they told me some things about the Jensens.
Was that a statement?
No, I don't recall taking a statement from the Voights on December 4th, 1998.
When did you take a statement from the Voights?
Sometime later.
Was the first time you took a statement a year later?
I don't recall any exact dates.
Show you Defendant's Exhibit 260. Is that a handwritten statement regarding the Voights?
Yes,
That's your handwriting, is that right?
yes.
And the date on that statement is what, Detective?
12/4 of 99.
Is that the date that you took that statement?
I don't know.
Well, that's the point of putting a date on the statement, is so that you know when the statement was taken. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. This is dated by Ted Voigt, and the date is 12/4 of 99. I didn't put that on there, and I'm looking through here for a date I would have put on it, but I believe that the 12/4/99 date is probably accurate.
That the 12/4/99 is probably accurate?
Yes,
So it's probably a year later?
yeah.
Now, could you go to page 15 and 16 of your report, exhibit, I think that was 258, all right?
Sorry, what page, sir?
Pages 15 and 16.
Yes,
And there you have, this is your narrative report, correct?
yes,
And in your narrative report, which is a single space typed report, right?
yes.
There's, on 15 and 16, there's basically an entire page of single space typed report about interviewing the Voights on December 4th, 1998, true?
True.
So you did take a statement from the Voights on December 4th, 1998?
Yes, I spoke with them. Are you asking me, is this the statement from 98?
Well, you did take a statement from them. You wrote down a long narrative, right?
Yes,
Of what they had to say. And do you think that that's also the day probably that Mr. Voigt and Mrs. Voigt gave you the statement that you hand wrote?
no,
Is there anywhere in your narrative report where you talk about going back to the Voights in December of 1999 to obtain another statement from them?
I believe so. And I'm looking
Please
for that.
identify that for me.
I'll call your attention to page 21. On the top, the second paragraph, or not second
Okay.
paragraph, but I obtained a written statement from the Voights, note statement.
And you don't have a date on that, but you think that refers to December 4th of 1999?
I'm rather sure that it does
Okay.
refer to that, this statement that you just showed me. If you look previously to that, you looked at Dr. Lapp, well, I don't want to read the report without direction, but look
You're
at
saying
the-
it's in chronological order, and that would fit in with 12/4/99, right?
Yes.
True?
No, well, no, you're misstating what I'm trying to tell you. Look at the paragraph after that. It starts off with Dr. Lavin,
Yes.
and it has the date 12/10/99.
Right, it's in chronological order, and the Voight statement being in the paragraph before fits in with that chronological order as being December 4th of 1999.
And you said 98 last time, so I thought
mistake.
this gets, I know, rather, that's why I'm trying to be specific.
But you have a full page on December 4th, 1998 of a narrative involving the Voights, true? In your narrative report.
Yes,
So you must have spent a good amount of time with them to put that together, true?
yes.
Over an hour?
I don't recall the exact time.
Well, are there any exact times you can provide me with?
It depends on what times you'd like to know.
I'd like to know everything you did on December 4th.
I don't recall anything else.
Well, what time did you leave the Voights?
I'm not sure.
And how long after, can you tell me how long after leaving the Voights it was that Mr. Jensen was allowed back in his house?
I don't recall.
And you can't say for sure if it was that day or the next day, correct?
I'm reasonably sure it was on the 4th.
Regarding the Voights, Mr. Ratzburg, you have a narrative report summarizing their statements to you at pages 15 and 16, right?
You're talking about the Voights on December 4th?
Yes.
Yes, on page 15.
So you have that one-page narrative there that's typewritten by you, right?
Yes,
And then a year later, you hand wrote how many page statement for the Voights?
six.
And that 6-page handwritten statement is exhibit what?
D 260.
And then you typed up another statement for the Voights sometime after Mr. Jensen was charged, correct?
No. I think so that we're,
You think that was done by the DA's office?
I know it was.
Okay, so then you're aware of that statement that was done, typed up by the DA's office after Mr. Jensen was charged, correct?
I don't recall the date on it.
Do you recall that was after the preliminary hearing in this case?
I do not.
Were you present for that interview?
Yes,
And and did you review that typewritten report for its accuracy at the time?
yes,
And I take it you try to make all these reports as accurate and complete as possible, right?
yes,
And included all the important information that the Voights provided you, right?
yes.
Nowhere in any of these 3 reports is there any indication that the Voights told you about observing Mr. Jensen give a high five to his father, right?
No,
That's not in there, correct?
that's not in there. Not that I recall.
And you don't recall any such statement, is why it's not in the report, right?
Correct.
On page 15 of your narrative report, Exhibit 258, Detective Ratzburg,
Yes,
about, let's see, I think it's the sentence that begins 6 lines from the bottom. There's an indication that Mark would not speak with the Voights, as he always kept to himself. Is that what they told you?
which page, sir?
15. 6 lines from the bottom. It's a sentence toward the end. The sentence begins towards the end of that line. I know it's difficult to read. They're so close. Did you find it?
What's the first word that you're referring to?
Mark?
Starting there, right there.
And did the Voights tell you that Mark would not speak with the Voights as he always kept to himself?
Objection, this is hearsay, Your Honor. The Voights have already testified about this.
I need to take, as I told you lawyers, I think earlier, I need to handle 2 other cases right now. So this is an ideal time to take a break. I'm going to ask you folks to return at 1 o'clock. Please don't talk about the case during the break.
Please be seated.
Good afternoon, everyone. And we'll continue with Mr. Alvey's cross-examination.
Detective Ratzburg, just before we broke, we've been talking about the 3 statements you had obtained from the Voights. What do you call that?
You're talking about the 3-page statement?
No, the 3 statements. You had a statement that you recorded in narrative form, then the handwritten statement you took, and then the statement that the district attorney's office typed up, correct?
3 written statements, yes. Or documented.
Pardon me?
Documented statements.
Yes. Are there other statements?
I talked to the Voights probably 10, 15 times over the last 9 years.
But you've only documented 3 of those conversations?
Yes.
I'll show you Exhibit 261. This is the typewritten statement from the DA's office for Margaret Voight.
Yes,
And you signed that as a witness?
I did.
And on that same date, a typewritten statement was obtained from Ted Voight as well, correct?
Correct.
And what is the date of that statement?
Date of the statement with my signature is 7/22/02.
I'm sorry to hear 722 what?
02.
02.
Thank you.
Going back to Exhibit 258, which is your narrative report. You have that?
Yes,
And that's the information you obtained from the Voights in 1998, correct?
page 15.
That's the information you obtained from the Voights in 1998, correct?
Yes,
December 4th, right?
yes.
Did the Voights tell you that Julie would never come over on the weekend because Mark did not like her talking to the neighbors? On that date?
Possibly.
Does that mean you don't remember, you're not sure?
Well, I've talked to him, like I said, a lot in the last years of this, and some of it seems to blend together a little bit. And several times I talked to them, they were reluctant at first because they were afraid of their safety, because Mark Jensen lived next door to them. So I consoled them on those issues. I talked to them about the case. They were reluctant on the 4th to make a written statement because they were afraid that Mark Jensen might come after them.
Mr. Ratzburg, you have a 1-page narrative of all the things they told you here.
Yes,
They gave you lots of information on December 4th, 1998.
yes.
There wasn't any reluctance. They told you all these things that are contained in this 1 page here, right?
Maybe I misstated it. Reluctance to make a written statement, they were somewhat reluctant. Verbally, they had no problem talking with me.
They never told you one word about Mr. Jensen ever being violent with anybody, right?
On which day? On the
Any
phone?
day.
No, they didn't.
And my question is, on that day, did they tell you that Mark didn't like her talking to the neighbors?
Objection, Your Honor. Which day is counsel referring to?
December 4th, 1998.
That's what I have in my report.
Did they say that?
I don't have an independent recollection of that. They could have. Like I said, I've talked to them so many times, but that's what's in my report.
Is that your understanding? Is that they said that Mark Jensen would let his wife talk to them?
That was my understanding, not necessarily on the 4th of December of '98, but I recall them saying that, yes.
So you don't, the Voights never told you that over the years they were friendly with both of the Jensens?
They told me they were friendly with them at some point, yes.
That they did social things together?
I recall them telling me that they did do that. Not necessarily on the 4th, but over the last 9 years they have.
Right, that they told you that they were friendly with Mark Jensen, right?
Objection, Your Honor, this is hearsay. And as far as what the Voights said, and the Voights have already testified about this.
Well, the objection's overruled.
I'm sorry, would you repeat your question?
Right, they told you they were been friendly with Mark Jensen during the years they've been his neighbor, right?
Yes.
Mr. Voight told you you'd gone fishing with Mr. Jensen, right?
I don't recall that in particular.
Did you also ask the Voights about if they knew anything about harassment in 1996 and 1997?
I believe I did.
And the Voights told you that that was before they knew Julie?
They could have.
But could you look at page 16 of your report, the last 2 sentences of the first paragraph?
Yes, that would be correct.
So they told you that they didn't know Julie before 1996 and 1997?
It's not the objection. That's not what that says. It's a mischaracterization of what's in here.
Mr. Ratzburg,
Just a moment. May I see the document? Was that an objection?
Yes, I object.
I'll read it.
Go ahead.
It says, I inquired about the photos being left around the home in 1996/1997, and the Voights did not know much about it. However, Julie did make reference to it. This occurred before they knew Julie. That's what it says, right?
Yes.
Is that what they told you? Is that they didn't know Julie when the photos were being left around the home in 1996 and 97?
That's what that says, yes.
Is that what they said to you? Or is it?
Yes.
That's what they did say to you?
I put it down in my report as such, so.
Are you aware from later conversations with the Voights that they lived there and known her since maybe 1992 or 93?
Well, and again, I don't recall the exact detail, but I remember they were across the street. They bought some property from them. And I don't know if maybe they knew Mark instead of Julie or some. I recall some conversation with them about that. So, going back to what they told me and what they were going back to 1996 and 1997, I'm just not sure.
This is only a year or two earlier, right?
To what year, 98?
96 and 97, from when you were talking to him, December 4th of 1998?
Well, it's still nine plus years that I talked to him, and then this would have been a year and 2 years before 98. So that's 10 years?
They claim that they had only known Julie just a brief time. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I think they knew Julie rather well.
I'm not asking how well they knew her, I'm asking how long they knew her. And are you saying it wasn't before 1996 or 97? That's what you say they told you then?
That's what I have in my report. Yes.
I'm going to ask you a couple of more questions about the autopsy. Mr. Ratzburg, how many photos did you take at that autopsy?
I don't know.
Do you have any kind of estimate?
No, I don't.
Did you change the roll of film?
I'm sure I didn't do that while I was at the autopsy. I recall gloving up and being dirty myself because I wanted to examine some of the evidence and be close to Dr. Chambliss in case he found anything. I know that one thing that concerned me, and I recall from the Jensen photos, was the part about syringe. So I was gloved up and I was looking for needle marks in Judy Jensen's body. So for a majority of the autopsy, I was actually dirty, but I do recall taking a couple pictures for Dr. Chambliss.
I'm sorry, what was the answer to the question of, did you change the roll of film?
I did not.
Did Dr. Chambliss?
I don't know.
Is it your recollection that only one roll of film was taken?
I don't have any recollection.
Do you have any idea how many photographs Dr. Chambliss took?
I do not.
How many autopsies had you been to prior to that time?
Several.
What does that mean?
More than 5, less than 10?
How many homicide cases have you been the lead investigator in as of 1998?
Two or three?
Are you aware of any photographs being taken before incision was made of the autopsy?
And I wasn't in charge of the photos. I don't know. That was Dr. Chambliss's duty or responsibility for photos. I didn't take any for the police department or myself. I do not know.
Do you know if you took any before incision?
I don't know.
On December 3rd, at the Jensen home, you seized a computer, right?
Correct.
Sure, it's been marked as defendant's exhibit 132. Is that a photograph that was taken? Yeah.
The glare of the light, I can't see it, sir. Yes, it is. I'm just not, this appears to be a picture of the Jensen den. I'm just not sure of its origin. I don't know where you got this photo from.
Is that a photograph that your department took?
I'm unsure.
Do you have your photographs with you?
Actually, the special prosecutor has them.
Why don't you tell me if that's a photograph that your department took?
We're going to, I'm going to just step out of here for a few minutes. One of the calls that I referred to before is coming.
Please all rise.